Greetings to you all and welcome to the lesson. Today we are going to discuss the moral and ethical issues in taxation. The chapter is professional practice in taxation. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to highlight the moral and ethical issues in taxation. And candidates in the realm of professional practice in taxation, several moral issues and ethical issues often come to the forefront. And these are the issues we want to discuss in our today's lesson. The first obvious moral and ethical issue in taxation is that one to do with confidentiality and privacy. Confidentiality and privacy. Tax professionals have access to sensitive financial information of their clients, and therefore maintaining client confidentiality is a significant ethical responsibility. Why? Because sharing or misusing this information can lead to breaches of trust and legal ramifications. So confidentiality and privacy is one of the moral and ethical issues in taxation, by the very fact that tax professionals get access to sensitive financial information of their clients. The second ethical issue is conflict of interest. Conflict of interest. Number two, conflict of interest. This is an ethical issue. Tax advisors may face conflict of interest between serving multiple clients with competing interests. So if you are a tax advisor of two competing companies, then that may raise a conflict of interest issue. So balancing such interests while providing impartial advice can be ethically challenging. Conflict of interest. Professional competence is another ethical issue. Professional competence. Professional competence. Tax professionals are expected to possess adequate knowledge and skills to provide accurate and reliable advice. So failing to stay updated with tax laws and regulations can lead to errors and ethical dilemmas. So tax professionals are required to maintain high level of professional competence. Tax avoidance, number 4. Versus tax evasion. Tax avoidance versus tax evasion. How is that an ethical issue? Now, tax advisors, candidates, must navigate the thin line or the fine line between legitimate tax planning, which is tax avoidance, and illegal activities, which is tax evasion. So ethical issues arise when advising clients on aggressive tax strategies that may exploit loopholes or push legal boundaries. Tax avoidance versus tax evasion. So that's another point. Do you understand? Number 5, honesty and integrity. This is yet another ethical issue. Honesty and integrity. Upholding honesty and integrity in dealings with the tax authorities, in dealings with clients, in dealings with other stakeholders is crucial, because misrepresenting facts or providing misleading information can lead to ethical breaches. Honesty and integrity is an ethical issue. 6. Responsibility to society. Responsibility to society. Tax professionals have a responsibility to society to ensure that clients pay their fair share of taxes. So ethical considerations may arise when advising on strategies that excessively minimize tax liabilities, potentially undermining the tax system's integrity. So we know on one hand, tax professionals have a responsibility of advising their clients on ways of minimizing tax liability. But while doing so, the tax professionals must be aware of the fact that they have a responsibility also to the society. So ethical considerations may arise when advising on strategies that excessively minimize tax liability to the extent that the tax system integrity in the country is compromised or potentially undermined. So responsibility to society. 7. Advocacy is yet another ethical issue. Advocacy, you can put it together with objectivity. Advocacy and objectivity. Here is a question of balancing the role of an advocate for the clients while maintaining objectivity and adhering to ethical standards. Those two, balancing the two. Okay? The tax consultants has to balance the two all the time. It is a constant challenge, balancing the role of an advocate for the clients and maintaining objectivity at the same time. So tax consultants or experts must ensure their advice aligns with ethical principles. Their advice aligns with the law, even when advocating for their clients. So advocacy and objectivity can be a moral or ethical issue, as I've explained. Number 8, social responsibility. How is social responsibility an ethical issue in taxation? Now, tax advisors may face ethical dilemmas related to corporate social responsibility. And this comes about when advising companies on tax strategies that comply with the law but might be perceived as socially irresponsible. And that creates what we call ethical conflict. Social responsibility. That is how social responsibility may be an ethical issue in taxation. Number 9, compliance with the laws and regulations. Compliance with laws and regulations. Now, ethical dilemmas can arise when a tax professional faces pressure to bypass regulations or standards to achieve certain outcomes for the client. And therefore, upholding ethical standards while adhering to legal requirements, is essential. Number 9 or 10 is an ethical issue related to professional independence. Professional independence. Professional independence. Maintaining independence and avoiding undue influence from clients or other stakeholders is crucial for tax experts or professionals. So ethical issues may arise when or where external pressures compromise a tax professional's ability to provide unbiased advice. So professionals are required to, at all times, maintain professional independence. Their decisions must not be biased or be influenced by any external forces. 11, transparency and disclosure. This is the last point, transparency and disclosure. Tax advisors should strive for transparency in their dealings. These are dealings with clients, dealings with the revenue authority and other stakeholders. And this includes disclosing their fees, disclosing risks associated with tax strategies, conflicts of interest. They should disclose conflicts of interest and so on. Transparency and disclosure. So candidates, these are 11 areas as far as moral and ethical issues in taxation is concerned. Number 1, confidentiality and privacy. Number 2, conflict of interest. Number 3, professional competence. Number 4, tax avoidance versus tax evasion. Number 5, honesty and integrity. Number 6, social responsibility. Number 9, advocacy versus objectivity. Number 8, social responsibility. Number 9, compliance with laws and regulations. Number 10, professional independence. And lastly, transparency and disclosure. Moral and ethical issues in taxation. Now, in conclusion, candidates, navigating these ethical considerations as a tax professional or a tax advisor requires one to adhere to professional codes of conduct, requires one to maintain ongoing education, because there's no way one can be professionally competent without ongoing or continuous education. It also requires one to evaluate their decisions in light of ethical principles. So it is essential to prioritize ethical behavior in order to uphold trust and integrity within the profession and within the broader society. So that marks the end of our today's lesson, where we discussed 11 points that are related to moral and ethical issues in taxation. So we'll close the lesson by I have revision questions for you. Moral and ethical issues in taxation. Number 1, how do tax advisors navigate ethical dilemmas when advising clients on tax planning or compliance? What ethical standards guide their decision-making process? Number 2, how do moral considerations influence tax compliance strategies and practices? How do tax professionals ensure fairness and equity in their approaches? Number 3, what role do transparency and honesty play in ethical tax practice? How do these values impact interactions with clients and tax authorities? Then lastly, number 4, what moral obligations do tax professionals have towards society? How do considerations of social responsibility shape their advice and actions in tax matters? Thank you for attending the lesson. Bye-bye.